All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of the Professional Brotherhood podcast. Good evening, Kara. How are you doing today?
Good evening. I'm well. How are you?
Good. Good to have you back. It's been
Thank you.
a
I
been a
had a
couple.
little hiatus for
Yeah,
over the holidays and a little bit of the craziness at the hospital. So I'm
I
back
hear
and
you.
better than ever.
Well, good. It's good. It's good to have you back. I think I know I missed you. I'm sure others
Oh,
missed you as well. So thanks for
thank you.
being back on the show. Um, have another great guest this evening or today, whenever you happen to be listening to this afternoon. Um, Continuing bringing some friends of mine on the show that I had the privilege of coming up in the fire service with and got to know and obviously became friendly, and I still follow today and have always been an influence. We started off with we had Tad a few episodes back, Tad Mapledorm. We had Eric Lubnetsky. We had Matt Steen, and now I am privileged to have John Stern on the show. John, how are you today?
Good, good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to have you. I know we've been going back and forth for a little while about doing this. So John and I, for those of you that caught the episode, the two of us were on National Fire Radio together. We had a lot of fun with Jeremy and Rob doing that, and as soon as we were done recording the episode, I knew I wanted to bring John on onto our platform to talk about some things. John, if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself to everybody, give a little background story, and we'll go on from there.
Okay, very well. Thank you. First name John, last name Stern. I've been in the state of fire service here since 1993, and started out in Rock Hill, New York, and kind of worked my way through being a new junior firefighter at that point in 1993. Really enjoyed my time in the fire service volunteering, and kind of just it blossomed into a career. Went through school, obviously, and when I was done with high school, I was at kind of on a fence of what do I want to do? Do I want to go to college and continue on with educational stuff that way, or follow my dreams and passion of in the fire service? And right for wrong, however you want to look at it, I decided the fire service, and I'm very grateful that I actually did that. It took a long time to get where I'm at today, but from 1993 to today, which is amazing, 2021. I'm no longer in the Rock Hill area, but my the foundation of who I am is always going to be in Rock Hill. And I'm currently working in the fire service right outside of Washington, D.C., in a large metropolitan area. Hold the rank of captain, and I'm very blessed that I have everything I have today.
Yeah, you have had a good career. Being able to watch, from the sidelines is always fun to see people strive at something that that they enjoy. I definitely want to kind of start from the beginning and work our way through to what you're doing now, because your experience in the volunteer service as a young guy, as you said, definitely set you up for success. I know you had some phenomenal mentors. We shared some of those people in the early years. We'll get into some other stories. Look, everything's not always fun and fun in the sun. John and I we've butted heads at times as young stubborn firefighters. But I think that helps us all grow. So I want to dig into all of that stuff. Let's kind of start at the beginning. How did, and look, obviously everybody knows I'm gonna be a little bit biased to this conversation because I've been fortunate to be involved with the Rock Hill Fire Company for the past 11 years already, and it just blows my mind that it's already been 11 years. And No, I'm sorry, 10 this year. 10. I gave myself an extra year. Look at that, 10 years this year. So obviously, I'm going to be a little biased to what John is saying, but I can tell you that it's absolutely going to be true. So let's rewind to how those formative years helped build you into the firefighter you are today.
Absolutely. I wouldn't use button heads. I would say very passionate. I would
Yeah, I
say,
agree.
yeah,
I
yeah,
agree. Young and passionate, which could
yes,
definitely
yeah,
be, looked at as button heads.
yeah, yeah. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
There's a very fine line. It kind of goes sometimes teeters, but
Yeah, I hear you.
it was all obviously with good intent. So,
For
but
sure. For sure.
let's see, 1993. Kind of go back in time here. Um, Went to my parents, and actually much earlier than that. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I kind of grew up very young in New York City, and I think that's where the bug of this is what I want to do started. To be honest with you, listening to sirens, as a very small child, and then like probably a large majority of children always they look at the fire truck, they see firefighters, and they're like, I want to be that, and um, so it kind of most likely started at that age. Then my parents moved up to Sullivan County, and now kind of moving forward in time. In 1993, 16 years old at the time, I went to my parents. I said, I think I want to volunteer. I think I want to try this out. And I honestly do think even to this day, they thought I was joking around. Not that they didn't take me 100% serious, but it was kind of one of these things where, I think they thought it was like a new fishing rod and you would be fishing every single day and then it would just be old news and you would move on to the next thing.
Right.
And so when, and I remember my mom driving me. I wasn't driving it even at 16. I might have had a junior, a permit or something, but she drove me up to the firehouse. I got some information. I knew that Thursdays were the nights that that they trained and somebody was going to be at the firehouse, and drove me up there, got an application. I met some of the guys at the time, and filled it out. And short time, weeks later, became a member. And honestly, like I said before, it is the foundation of who I am. I am who I am because of the volunteering that I experienced as a young junior firefighter and working my way up through the rank structure there. So 93 joined, spent obviously a couple of years as just a firefighter. Really, really loved every aspect of being a firefighter, loved every aspect of the volunteer organization. I've said this before, I will always say it. The volunteer organization in Rock Hill is a true brotherhood. And I mean that truly. And it doesn't matter, people, guy or girl, however you want to say it, the brotherhood is brotherhood, and it lives and it always will live strong within the four walls of that firehouse. And it is why I enjoy what I do, and I instill those things to this day. So went through the rank structure, firefighter, eventually through time and training and really, really getting into it, decided to move up, became lieutenant. I hit every rank within Rock Hill other than the fire chief because I chose I chose my path of moving on and moving out and going from the volunteer organization to a career paid position, which was a very difficult decision. And I honestly will say this, I did not want to leave Rock Hill. And even though my dream was right there in front of me, I had days before making an actual decision. Do I go or not go? Because I had so much passion, love for that place.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely understand that. And it, I could see how it could be a difficult decision, because I know I've been in similar places in my journey through life. Not ever with the question of, do I completely want to move out of the area, but what path do I want to take? Do I want to stay on the path that I'm on, or go down a career path one way or another? And for me, I stayed the course that I was on, and I'm thankful that I did. But everybody's got to make that decision for themselves. Kara, I know your wheels are turning, because you talk a lot about mentorship and mentor programs. We've had people on before just to specifically talk about that in itself. So I'm sure when John talks about, his early days, you've got some thoughts going on there.
Yeah, one thing that really sticks out to me is kind of the ideal that someone 16 years old who doesn't have it necessarily historically in their family, I grew up in the fire service. I was a firehouse brat. My grandfather was a fireman. My dad was a fireman. And so it's, I have the kind of the more of the traditional mindset about it, of being involved in the fire department and all the way up through my youth. But when you have somebody that's just walking in because they just want to try it out, and they're 16 years old, it's a huge opportunity that I think is really undervalued and underestimated by a lot of departments. When you have that 16-year-old coming in, your mindset should be, can I turn out a fireman from this person? Regardless if they stay with you or move on to serve somewhere else in the country or somewhere else in the world, you have an opportunity in that moment to make a fireman. And I think that a lot of times people really undervalue that and think, well, it's just a junior. He's just trying to get his community service hours. He's just trying to get his volunteer hours for school or whatever. And in some cases, that's the truth. It doesn't work out for everybody. But just to have the recognition of that opportunity that's before you, I think is really vital.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree. We don't. I think sometimes we try to look so long term. We're looking at somebody that's young and walks into the firehouse, and I know some folks are thinking, are like you said, are they going to stick around? Are they here for the long haul? Is our investment going to pay out for us? Right. Well,
Right.
us is the fire service as a whole, as a
Right.
family, right? Not necessarily just our community. Sure, if they end up staying in our community, that's phenomenal. We always love people that stick around and end up being a valuable member of our team for long term. But I look at a guy like John, who started, just walked in on a whim, right? Just said, hey, mom, dad, take me down to the firehouse. I want to do this thing, and here all these years later, it's, it's a career, it's a passion, it's a livelihood.
But he's a testament to Rock Hill, because even though he's not there anymore, like, listen to what he just said, listen to how he talks about it.
For sure.
So anybody else that's in your area that's hearing that's considering whether or not they want to serve as a fireman, is going to hear that and say, like, this guy's not even there anymore, and he's still talking great about it.
Yeah.
You know what? And all you guys have hit it right on the nose there. The one thing different now, I would say, than back in, the early 90s and before that, was that it took individual like yourself to kind of take it upon to look and move forward with just the fire service. We're using that as an example. But in today's society, in order to get somebody like myself or another 16-year-old interested, you actually have to go out there and seek them.
Right.
And
Sure.
it's different now. I mean, of course you're going to find, and I think more likely it's going to be this scenario like you have, which is it's in your family. You were brought up in it. You saw your dad do it. You saw your uncle do it. You saw your brother do it. You saw, it was kind of right there in front of you, and you kind of just caught on quick. For somebody like myself, at least at that time, and even to today, I don't have anybody else in the fire service.
Mm-hmm.
So the passion and the love and the basically the want to do came from just, I heard a siren, I saw a fire engine, and I stayed on top of it. And as a very young, 3, 4, 5-year-old to when I was 16 years old. And I was like, I'm doing this thing. And mom and dad take me up to the firehouse because I'm ready to volunteer. Okay, we'll take you up there. But yeah.
And I can totally relate to your story, because I'm like John. My grandfather on my father's side was a volunteer firefighter. I did not really have much of a relationship with my grandfather growing up, so I really didn't even know that until many years later. Nobody else in my family was a volunteer, and the guys that I work with at the training center always like to hear me tell this story on the first night of firefighter 1. When we go around the room and ask, hey, why'd you decide to join the fire service? Well, I was working the job that I'm working now, and I noticed that all the guys that I was working with had this thing on their hip that would beep a couple times a day. And sometimes they would get up and leave work and not come back. And I'm like,
you're like, this is for me.
I'm like, exactly. I'm like, what's going on? And I kind of listened and paid attention, found out they were all volunteer firefighters. And I went down to the firehouse and put in an application. And, here we are 30 years later, and I'm still doing it. And I remember the first time this beeper, this pager went off, and they were a hell of a lot bigger back then than they are now.
Yeah.
I remember the first time that pager went off, it was like 4:30 in the afternoon. I got off at 5, and I was standing there, and the guys are like, "Are you going?" And I didn't even know what to do. They're like, "You got to go." I'm like, "Go where?" I was so completely green to the whole thing. Had my little blue light. Like, I didn't even know what the first thing I was supposed to do was, so I relate to John's story, because, when it's not a part of you growing up, it can be a little overwhelming coming in, and you need people to grab onto you and show you the ropes. And I think, that's where, the mentors, the family, as John referred to, the people inside those 4 walls of the firehouse, that's where it really makes a difference.
Yeah, it made a difference for me. I mean, we talk about mentorship and mentors, and, it's a word that I think a lot of people just don't realize, especially when you're 16 years old and young, walking into the firehouse. Every single one of those guys, doesn't matter their age, and what they brought to the table, but I soaked up everything that they said, everything they did, everything they taught me. And, I knew that I was the youngest guy at the time in the firehouse. But I was okay with it, because I knew at some point I wasn't going to be that youngest guy anymore in the firehouse. And it was going to be my time to talk to the next youngest guy, and to make sure that the next youngest guy understands, the fire service and what we are all about. And, again, it was, and we can mention names, but every single person within those 4 walls, and I'll say it again, influenced me, then and even to today.
Sure. I mean, they're lessons we take with us through our journey, the how we interact with people, how people interact with us, how they inspire us, how they, motivate us to do what we do. I mean, they're lessons that we use for the rest of our lives, which is molds us into the person that we are, and the firefighter that we are.
Yeah. We're like little bits of every single person that has ever kind of, played a role in, especially in the fire service. You learn from one person, and you learn something totally different from somebody else. And you're learning things you don't even realize you're learning until later in life. I mean, as
Sure.
you grow up, you realize now I understand what they were trying to, teach me, and an example, and he's passed, but John Dollard, in the Rock Hill Firehouse, as a young member, a young buck, I guess we'll use that word. I was very, and I'm still gun ho, but I was very much rush. Like, get there, do this, do that, go, like go. And I remember him saying to me, simple things. It's slow is fast. Slow down. Take a second. Think about it. Don't react. Take in the whole picture. And that was like many years ago.
Sure.
So again, it's little things that have played a difference and again made me who I am.
Absolutely.
Simple things like that, I think, stick with you, and you bring them with you to every scene. You hear that little voice in your head from different people, that's situational almost. I mean, one of the things that I remember when I first started was one of my mentors in the department told me, remember, when you get out of the rig, it's not your emergency. It's
Yep.
First thing that you have to think about. It's not your emergency. So don't personalize it, and stay, focused on assessing the scene, thinking about what you're going to do, thinking about what tools you're going to use, and continue that thought process and that line of thinking throughout the whole call. And that's something that I still think about with every call that we go on. You have that little voice in your head that you hear, that's instilled in you when you first start out.
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Absolutely. So John, you progressed your way through the ranks at the firehouse. You were assistant chief when you decided to go the career route. You were also a very, very, very active paramedic at the time. I mean, all of these things, obviously prepared you for your career move. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is when John was an assistant chief, I was the chief, my first go around, in Monticello, which, we're same township. Okay. Within 5 miles of one another. So we always ran a lot of calls together. 9/11, I remember, one of the first phone calls was John and I having conversations. Hey, there's guys going to the city. What do you guys want to do? Do you guys want to, can you go? Do you want to go? Let's get some guys together and head to the city. And I mentioned earlier our passion, or John said passion. I said we were butting heads, but we used to have a part of our district. It still exists the same way today as it did back then, where the district line is very, very skewed. Basically, basically that line runs down the middle of the road, and then it becomes one district, and then it's the other district, and then it's back to the other district. So if you're not looking at the map, it's very, very hard to determine whose house you might be responding to. Is it in Monticello or is it in Rock Hill? And that was the thing that John and I shared some passion over for a few times.
Yes.
Listen, and I get it to this day. Obviously we were both a lot younger then, and when you're a lot younger, your passion tends to come out a little bit different than it does when you're wiser, older and wiser. But we went at it a few times over that district line. I remember one time we really went at it pretty good because we actually had a job down there, and we got called out first and then called them in for mutual aid. It ended up actually being Rock Hill's fire. John was pissed. I had a great big smile on my face because we beat him there. And,
yes.
Now that we look back at it, it's just good stories to, kind of share and laugh about. But,
to add to that, which is even funnier, like it just adding to everything you said. I remember having a conversation with a couple of the guys at Rock Hill. I was like, this crap is not going to happen again. We are going to find a sign shop, and we're going to hang signs on the interstate so everybody knows that they're coming into our fire district and they're leaving our fire district, because it's ours. We got to protect what is ours, you know? And
They're
again, I
still,
mean,
they're still there today, those signs.
oh, are they really?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
great.
oh, yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely.
That's great.
You guys are like all gangs in New York up there.
Ah,
But yeah, so you know, it's just, you know, you can tell there's lots of people that are into the job, you know, but then there's people that are really immersed, not just into the job. And when I say into it, you know, anybody can put on a t-shirt and say they're into being a firefighter, you know, but somebody that really immerses themselves in emergency services, um, you know, it's a special kind of person. And you know, working your way up through the volunteer firehouse, also putting, you know, going to paramedic school, getting involved in EMS. You know, how did that aspect of it, I mean, obviously helped you out when you decided to move down south because it was a part of the job, right?
right.
But how do you think that part of it, bringing all of that stuff together, kind of, you know, molded you into the guy that you are? Because EMS back then in our county was kind of a shit show too, right? I mean, you could,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, so I joined in 93 at the firehouse. 2 years later in 95-ish, somewhere around that time frame. You know, after, like I said, spending about 2 years volunteering, running auto accidents and other types of incidents, I was like, you know what? I think I want to try to get some EMS kind of training. And I started kind of exploring the idea, and I don't even know if they still have this kind of certification, but it was a CFR back then. Do they still have it?
Yeah, I think it's called EMR now in New York.
Oh, okay. So looked into becoming a certified first responder, CFR. At that time, also, defibrillators were starting to become a big thing. So it
Mhm.
was like CFRD. I was like, oh man, I got to do this thing. Yeah, yeah, you know. So
yeah.
kind of started looking to find classes that were nearby to get that training, and then I was like, oh my gosh, you need that many hours to get that cert. I was like, I don't know if I can pull this thing off, but I'll give it a try. And so I don't remember exactly where it was in the county, but it required me to drive to wherever it was, and you know, was dedicated to making sure I got that certification. Became a CFR, CFRD, and then I was like, you know, the firehouse, maybe I want to run some more calls. So I know there's a lot more medical calls than there are fire calls. And back then, the firehouse did not run EMS calls. The only medical call really that they ran was, or anytime they really ran with the ambulance, was on an auto accident, at those particular times. So I explored that idea. In Rock Hill, the ambulance and the fire are separate, so it was a separate organization, separate application, separate everything. So kind of, you know, talked to a few people, and decided, you know what, I'm gonna try to join there too, and then just see if I like it. And I like that as well. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, this is like, this is the best. I'm a fireman and I'm also a CFRD. So like, what's next? And what was next for me was then becoming an EMT, which required even more hours and more training.
Sure.
But I was like, you know what? I might be able to make a career out of this, because back then, you know, I was working at a produce station, like trying to make just a couple dollars. I was still living at home, you know. But I'm like, you know what? I might be able to turn this into something other than what it is now. And I'm going to try to get my EMT and then see what happens from there. And that's kind of what it kind of just blossomed, you know. Every year or every couple of years, I pushed myself to do the next thing. And then eventually, you know, I started working for an ALS service within Sullivan County. It was very small at the time. mobile medic, and I was an EMT there, and then I was, again, same exact thing. You know, I'm seeing the paramedic do things that I think I want to try to do as well, and I went and became a paramedic, and that was obviously a whole different ball game. That was much harder to do. It required a longer drive,
Yeah.
you know, and all those kind of things. But, you know, everything was step by step. Now, thinking about it today and looking back, you know, I'm happy that I did it that way. I probably had no idea I was doing it that way, but I'm happy that I didn't try to do everything all at once. And if we talk about EMS for a second, you know, I again remember, you know, a mentor of mine who said, you know, in order to be a good paramedic, you got to be a good EMT. And the same thing held for being a good EMT. You should be a good CFR. And
Mhm.
I kind of like made sure that those were kind of the backbone of how to become better in all of those services. So learn the basics, become good at the basics, and then start advancing. And that's what I ended up doing.
Well, and listen, that pathway, doing it in the way that you did it, you're taking steps and realizing with each step that you take that, hey, I really enjoy this. You know, this is something I really want to do and I want to keep getting better at. It's not like you woke up one morning and you're like, hey, I want to be a paramedic school. I want to be a paramedic. And you start driving back and forth to paramedic school. And, you know, you wake up one day and you realize this isn't for me, you know, and you killed however much time doing it. You know, you started out with that CFRD, and it's so funny. I completely, yeah, I forget about some things, but I remember what a big deal that was back then. You know, like,
Yeah.
you know, being a CFR or an EMT was one thing, but getting that little letter after your name and being able to throw that defibrillator, it's something that we totally all take for granted now, right? Because they're everywhere you go, you know.
Yeah.
But back then it was like, wow, I can actually do this now, and I can actually carry this thing with me too. You know, it's crazy. Yeah, you know. But I think that that's part of, yeah, that's a good way of doing things sometimes, you know, you know, following your passion, just taking steps to get there. Not always, you know, some people are able to dive all in at once and they realize, hey, this is the thing once they dive in. Um, but there's something to be said for, you know, a progression and
Right.
taking steps to where you want to go,
Yeah.
you know?
I think it's a difference between terminal velocity and growth mindset in people. You know, um, terminal velocity to me is you have like these really like super excited people that they just want to take like every single class that's available, and they do it for the certification and that piece of paper in their file. But they're not necessarily the ones that are out there training on those skills regularly to try to gain more information and more experience and more proficiency in the skills. It's an endpoint result for them, in a lot of ways. It's just I've got my certification in it, so that now I'm done, right? But like for you, John, what you're talking about is growth mindset, right? Like you want to have more knowledge and grow in the position that you're in and get more proficient in the position that you're in before you go on to the next phase. And that's really valuable, as a fireman and as an EMS provider, to have that, because that shows that you're not going to reject the new things that come in. You're going to investigate them, right? You're going to try it out. You're going to see what it's about. You're not going to have this like, well, I already learned that. I don't need to go over it again. So not everybody has that. And everybody, you know, brings their own things to the table. But when you have a growth mindset like that, you're prone to success because of the way that you're thinking and growing as a person every time that you're learning something new.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. John, one thing that you talked about when we were on with Jeremy and Rob, and I definitely wanted to talk about this for a bit, um, was you used the word caring. Okay. Um, and I remember at the time we had a lot going on in that conversation. We were talking about a lot of different things, and you know, you threw that word caring in there, and I listened to you for a while, and it kind of spoke to me because I never looked at things that way, but I'm sure I had, but people don't tend to like to use warm and fuzzy words like caring, when they refer to emergency services, the fire service, whatever, would you mind talking about that a little bit, and your take on caring and the job and what we do?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are many words out there that people have, they throw out, and they all they all mean something. They're all huge, and hopefully people just don't say it just to say it. There's actually some meaning behind it. So when you talk about making sure there's trust, and making sure that you're doing the right thing, and that you're always this and you're always that. But for me, it's very simple. And like you said, it's the key word of care. Care to me is everything that I do. It is 100% what I do every single day, either on the job, when I volunteered, even at home, even with friends. If you start losing the care, then you start losing everything. And we'll talk about the fire service for a second. And it doesn't matter if you're volunteering or you're paid career somewhere, anywhere in this country, anywhere in this world. At some point, if you sit down, you're like, you know what? I've lost care. I've lost the passion of caring for others, and more importantly, I've lost the passion of caring for me, because when you care, you're caring for everything. It's not just you, it's everything around you as well.
Mhm.
And it's time to sit down, kind of reel in, kind of realize and figure out, maybe I need a reset. And sometimes it could just be that. It could just be a quick reset. And other times it could just be, it's time to move on. It's time to do something else. It's time to get my mind thinking of something totally different, because this thing is eating me up, and it's hard sometimes for people to kind of realize that, and look in the mirror and say, you know what, I need to step away. I need to
Sure.
kind of move on. But if you use the word care, start off with that in mind, and thinking about the care part. That hopefully will help you and put you down a path of realizing, maybe it's, let me stop for a second. Let me regroup. Let me reset, and let me go again where I need to go. The fire service, like you said, Brian, might not use words like care, but to me, I use that all the time. I used it when I volunteered. Unfortunately, I can't volunteer now with kids and everything else, and I use it to this day with my job. And it's important. It means almost everything that I do revolves around that word.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. One thing that you said that I just wrote down as you were speaking, some, listen, sometimes whether you're doing this as a job or you're doing it as a volunteer job, right? Because people count on us, so
Absolutely.
being utilizing the word volunteer to your benefit. I've never bought into that. I know you've never bought into that. I know Kara doesn't buy into that. Oh, I'm just a volunteer. Hate that phrase. Absolutely hate it. Right? Because people still depend on you every single day. Right? And they don't want to know that, I don't feel like it today because I'm just a volunteer, but it is okay to take a break. Right. And,
Mhm.
and sometimes we need to just, even if it's for a day, just step away, shut off the pager, turn off the phone, right? And just decompress, right? Just get away from it all. And people that really, really enjoy doing this, really enjoy being a part of the service, you won't step away for long. You probably after a solid day, probably going to be jonesing for some action, or something,
Yep.
and you're gonna come back. But it does get stressful at times. It can get overwhelming at times. There can be a lot of, drama and outside stuff that can influence you. There's nothing wrong with stepping away for a little while.
Yeah.
And that all plays into, caring about what you're doing, right? Caring about your community, caring about your organization, caring about yourself and the people that are around you. Because I know me personally, when I'm having a bad day at the firehouse, or there's stuff going on at the firehouse and it's affecting me, it usually ends up affecting the household, because I usually come home pretty miserable,
Yeah.
and it's written all over your face, and everybody can tell that you're not you're not,
Right.
that something's going on. So
Right.
so I think it's a great way to look at things in a word that's not often used in relation to the fire service or emergency services as a whole.
Well, and we talked a little bit about mentors.
Yeah.
Somebody out there listening to this, if you have, it doesn't matter the age. I mean, you got somebody who's 16 or who is 46, stepping in the door and wanting to volunteer, the mentor, in my opinion, needs to explain the care part of it. That, we want you here. We want you to be a member. We're happy for you to join. But here are some of the things, and some of those things has to have the care part of it. It
Mhm.
has to be in there, and it has to be explained. And again, if I was, let's just say I was your mentor, Brian, I would say, hey, Brian, I would go through the whole thing, but I would also say, hey, listen, if at any point you're having, a lack of care or some questioning, please come to me. We can sit down, talk about it, discuss it. Maybe I can help you out, and maybe even I can give you some advice. But if you don't come to me and we don't have that conversation, then I will never know, and I
Sure.
can't be there to help you.
Yep. Absolutely. Kara?
I was just going to add to that self-care is like something that you don't hear a lot about in the fire service or EMS. And I think we are starting to hear more about firefighter wellness and firefighter fitness. And I think that there is a little bit of a culture shift in that direction, which I think is great. And I like to see the momentum of that continue for sure. But I think that, again, when you have somebody joining for the first time and walking in the door, when you're setting them up with a mentor, when you're talking about recruitment and retention of your firefighters, having a conversation about self-care and how to be able to take a step back and recognize the signs of when you need a break and when you need to have that mental reset, and teaching from the get-go that that's acceptable and important is really something that you need to talk about with the folks that are taking on the mentorship role, and the people that are doing your recruitment as well. You want to prevent. We should be in the business of prevention, right? And safety for everybody, and that is paramount of importance to our crew, our personnel that we are supposed to be looking after, so that they can take care of everybody else.
For sure. Absolutely.
100%. 100%. Can I add just one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Again, just staying on the theme of care, I also think, and it's not all the time, but I do think there are scenarios of reasons why departments are having issues with retention, is that there was lack of care for trying to keep that member. When I say lack of care, it was like, you just kind of forgot about them. They joined, you got them in the door, and now you're expecting them to kind of just continue on. And it's not that simple. You have to, again, care about that new member. You have to care about making sure that they're set up for success, that, we're giving them all the information. We're kind of made the plate for them. Now they need to start eating it. And if they're not eating it, we need to kind of encourage them to eat it, to make sure that they turn into everything we want them to be and everything they want to be. But if we don't, as an organization and you know, the volunteer firehouse, if you don't show the care to that person that's walking in the door, the likelihood of them walking out the door is probably going to happen much sooner than later.
Right.
You
Absolutely.
know?
Yeah. Well, you know, and I think what part of that is, and I think that's, you know, people are realizing that this isn't as prevalent as it once was. You know, the volunteer fire service as a whole used to be so strong and heavy with volunteers coming in that were like Kara, you know, that had relatives that were in the service. They grew up in the service. They were firehouse brats, as she refers to herself. You know, and there's places out there that kind of take that for granted because that person is coming in. They're like, oh, he or she already knows everybody. They grew up here. They know the culture. They kind of, you know, it's much, much different for somebody that walks in and doesn't have any relationships walking through the door. You know, we have to help form those relationships. If they're not comfortable, if they don't feel comfort, they're not going to stick around for very long. You
Yep.
know, and it's our responsibility to make them feel comfortable, saying hello, you know, introducing people. Hey, have you met so and so? You know, just not take for granted that they're walking, you know, not think that they're walking around just introducing themselves to everybody that walks in the door, right? Because look, I know, you know, I remember the early years. It's overwhelming, you know, when you don't know everybody in a room and you're the new person and you're trying to figure this whole thing out by yourself, you know?
Especially young.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. So John, one thing I like to highlight, and I did this with the other guys as well, is look, I know there's lots of people that listen to the podcast or watch us on YouTube or connect with us on social media that, you know, that are in the volunteer service now and have aspirations of, you know, becoming a career firefighter somewhere, you know, and some like to stay within their, you know, their bubble, as we call it, you know, their immediate community. And if they're able to do that, that's great. You know, if there's offerings and avenues for them, that's great. But that's not always, you know, that's not always doable, you know, and like yourself, you traveled quite a ways to become you know, a career firefighter. So that pathway to the job that you took, you know, if you could just spend a couple minutes on that, is, you know, going south, what kind of led you there, and, you know, how taking that step, obviously you're happy with it, you've been there for a long time, you know, you've done well for yourself, you know, and it all started with, again, walking in the door at a volunteer firehouse in Sullivan County, New York, right? It's not Manhattan, folks, you know.
Close.
Close, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no. I again, like we talked, 16 years old, walked in the door, immediately enjoyed every second of the fire service. You know, learned a lot. And through the years, you know, I said, you know what? I'm going to continue on training. I'm going to continue on working towards to what I know now is a goal to be, you know, a paid career firefighter somewhere. Wasn't honestly in my thoughts when I was 16 years old. But I did know that I really loved and enjoyed every moment of the fire service. And so I think training really helped me out, you know, really progressed and my ability of knowing what I wanted to do. Um, you know, back in '93, at least in Rock Hill, we were still in the quarter boots. I mean, we didn't have bunker pants yet. You know, it's just, you know, small department, small volunteer firehouse. It just started coming about, And through the years, you know, new things were happening within the firehouse. You know, we went from Survive Air to Scott. We went from, you know, boots, quarter boots to bunker pants and new gear. And, you know, we went from very little training to a lot of training. You know, we went from, you know, learning and knowing, you know, the fire, how to put out a fire, to how to rescue and save our own. Like those things were starting to come out. And I really enjoyed it. And I was like, you know what, I need more. I want more. And then at some point, I want to say it was around 1999, 2000, somewhere around that time frame. I was finishing up, going to get my paramedic, and I was like, you know what, I want to try to see if I can make this a career. I'm going to start taking tests. You know, I was like, you know, in my head, I'm like, you know what, I feel like I have a good foundation. It might not be the best, but I have a really good foundation. My foot is in the door in the fire service. I've been volunteering now for several years. You know, I've been on some significant incidents. I've got a lot of good training under my belt. I'm going to give this a shot. And what I ended up doing for myself, was I ended up, it's funny, is Eric had Eric on from FDNY, you know, and myself, Eric, and Josh from Rock Hill, you know, kind of very close in age, similar age, but very similar passions. And we all kind of as a group were like, you know what, let's try to figure out where we can drive to take maybe some tests to get on the job. And initially, I would be honest, I think all of us wanted to kind of wanted to work right there in Monticello.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely.
No, I mean, that's honest. But it was a difficult path, you know, in the state of New York. And I don't know what it is today, but it was like a single test, you know, for the most part, civil service test, other than the city. You know, everywhere else in the state that had, say, a paid driver or some type of career staff, you know, it was a test, and it was difficult to get in. Like, you needed to know, you need to do well, and then you also probably needed to know somebody to help you out.
Yeah, you needed residency or something. Yep.
So, but for my path, we ended up, the three of us were trying to figure out, you know, we want to drive, be able to drive. Where's the farthest we're going to go? And we ended up driving down to Alexandria, Virginia, the city of Alexandria. It's right outside of DC. It was a 5-hour drive. That was like our max, you know. Went down there, took the test in the city of Alexandria, came out into the parking lot, and we ended up parking next to somebody else from New York. And I remember a kid had a red head. He was a red hair boy from New York. And he goes, what, you guys from New York too? And we were, three of us, like, oh yeah. He's like, you know what? There's this other place. It surrounds Alexandria. It's called Fairfax. You might want to look to see if they're, you know, having tests. And Josh and Eric didn't follow through with it. I ended up following through with it, and started going through the test process with them, and ended up getting on the job 2 years after starting the process. And haven't really, I mean, I looked back a little bit in the beginning. I really wanted to get back up north into New York, as close as I could. I really missed, and I still miss Rock Hill, but you know, I wanted to be up there. That was home for me, you know, and it still is home, but you know, really, you know, it was like a big fish in a small pond kind of thing. And anyway, got hired on the job in Fairfax. It's right outside of DC, large metropolitan department. And I've been fortunate and lucky enough to, you know, go through the rank structures there. You know, been on the job now 18 years there, which is unbelievable. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It is crazy. Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, listen, there's opportunities out there, and that's what we've liked to highlight to people. You know, sometimes we think, you know, if I know, talking to some younger firefighters, that that think that it might be something that they want to do as a career, they typically tend to think of what's immediately around us. And there's lots of different avenues out there. There's places you can go, there's places you can travel, there's tests that are open for you to take. There's jobs like, I mean, I brought Tad on to talk about his pathway with the military, and I've gotten a few calls from people and had conversations that didn't even know that path existed. They're like, wow, and it's, I think that if this is something that you're considering as a career, and it really is a passion of yours, just be open-minded. It's not going to be easy. Look, picking up and moving out of a small community to another state in a much larger, busier metropolitan area is not an easy move for anybody, right?
No.
Sure, it wasn't an easy move for you. And, I'm sure there's days where you were like, what in the hell am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a lot of those, especially, I would say the first 2 years of, getting on the job and moving down. It was difficult. And I was trying to see if I had a path to move back up north. But, I stuck with it. And it, like I said, it's worked out well for me. I'm very, grateful. I did what I did, but, the volunteer fire service again is the foundation for me. I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for, volunteering. And I really encourage, people to volunteer. If you have an opportunity within your community or somewhere nearby where you live, give it a shot. At the very least, if you are like on the fence and you're not really sure if this is what you want to do, and figure out, do they meet a certain time during the week or a month, or, go down there. I'm sure that nobody is going to say you can't come and see what we're about. Now,
Right.
Obviously, times right now are a little different. We have a pandemic, going on. So it might be hard to do things like that, but it's not going to last forever. And we're going to move on from this, and that might be the start for you. That might be, what you need to get out there and to give back to the community, and maybe light that passion that you didn't know you had. You don't know until until you try. It's the old, you don't know what you don't know. And especially if you have nobody within your family that is in the service, like is in the fire service, you have nothing to kind of, you can't talk to anybody. Like they're not giving you like, hey, this is what it's about. They meet every Thursday. They train, every Thursday. They do this every other month. You don't really have anything to fall back on. So at the very least, go out there, give it a shot, go talk to them, meet up with them, see what it's about, and see if it's something that you're interested in.
For sure. Kara, any questions, anything before I ask the final? I'm not going to forget to ask the question this time. So
No, I just want to add to what John said about those that are looking to volunteer. If you are thinking that you want to get on the job and you're looking at this as a career opportunity for you, don't discount being a volunteer first.
for sure.
Because a lot of volunteer departments have career folks that are volunteering with them that are on the job someplace else. So, you have a wealth of information and resources within your volunteer fire department as well. And it's a great place to find out if it's for you or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, bottom line is, don't forget where you came from. I think that's that when John speaks, you can tell he has never forgotten where he came from. He made that very, very obvious. And the other guys that I brought on, same thing. They've never, ever forgotten where they came from. Sure, they're on the job. They're doing great things. They get paid to do something they love. But at the end of the day, they remember, hey, I started in the volunteer fire service as a 16-year-old kid, and would be back there again today if I could be, would still be volunteering. So,
Yes.
yeah. All right. So the question we're going to be asking everybody this year, this season of the show, what does it mean to you to be a professional volunteer?
Great. What the meaning to me, if you want to be a professional, you want to be the best that you can be in something. And if we're talking about the fire service, it is the fire service. So a professional volunteer firefighter is somebody who wants to better themselves, who goes out there and continues to seek to be better. And that is through training. If you get on the job, regardless if it's in a volunteer house or in a paid service, if you think that you know everything, you're done. You don't know anything. You have to better yourself through training, and with training, time, and experience. And a professional volunteer firefighter, to me, is someone who continues to grow in the service through training.
Awesome. I love it. That's a great answer. I love that answer.
Perfect.
I just got a little fluttery right here. John, thank you very much. Listen, I appreciate you coming on. I had a blast when we did the National Fire Radio Show with those guys with you. I always enjoy talking to you. I love watching others, grow their passion and their career. And listen, I still remember, when we were both a bit younger guys with no gray hair in our facial hair, that were, passionate about what we were doing and running around trying to get as much of it as we could. And, and like you said, just kind of living it, every day. So, it was fun to catch up and to share your story with everybody. Anything you want to say in parting before I just go into the, how to contact us and all that fun stuff?
No, I'm thankful that you got me on here. I'm hoping that, if it made an impact on one person, then it was successful. Again, keep the passion, keep the love, but most importantly, keep the care. And that should follow you through the fire service as well as life.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. My friends, I want to thank you once again for tuning into another episode. It's a pleasure having John on. If you would like to give us some feedback on this episode, want to reach out and you have a question, comment, whatever. Best way is via the email, professional VFF. That's professionalvff@gmail.com. You can reach us through the social media pages, Instagram at professional.brotherhood. You can find Kara at St. Florian Fitness. That's st.Florian Fitness. Facebook at Chief Soller. And again, we're on the YouTube. You can watch this on the YouTube channel. Find us through the website, professionalbrotherhood.com. We love hearing from everybody. The feedback still continues to be phenomenal. If you have a question for John, you want to reach out to him directly, just shoot us a message and I'll absolutely connect you with him. I know some of you have reached out after some of our guests with questions about where they're from, where they work, how they could, maybe possibly look to a career in that area. And I know that everybody is always very, very willing to help out and to help others progress in the fire service. So as always, please don't forget, a paycheck does not make you a professional. How you approach the job does. Stay healthy and stay safe.